So, Carmine, the country, it's very polarized right now with people having very strong beliefs on one side or the other, and I just wanted to know where do you fall on Robb's will?
I, I legit thought you were gonna add. We were just talking. Yo, you can't do that. You can't do that.
What?
I have a
What?
half a mind to get you to restart this. No, don't restart it. You're just talking about like another show, and you come at me with that. So Rob's will. I'm familiar with it. It happens in. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say Clash, but it's most likely Storm
It's
because
in
I
Storm, yeah.
right because it's a response to Sansa being married to Tyrion, which I think happened in Storm of Swords.
Yes.
Um, so for those of you who don't know, Rob's will is a specific book plotline that essentially is Robb Stark's response to Sansa marrying Tyrion. And if something happens to Robb, then Winterfell would go to him. So Robb and a
Or
series
her, whoever,
or
whoever, whoever the person named in the will.
right. Well, no.
Yeah.
Like if something happens to Robb without a will, it would
Oh,
go
yes, 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 yeah. I'm
right.
sorry. Yeah. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this will is written basically who becomes Robb's successor and heir to Winterfell should something happen to him, and it's witnessed by a few people: Mage, Mormont, Galbert Glover, um, Catelyn, of course, and Edmure Tully. I'm sure there's like two more people. It's escaping me. That's the basics of what I know. That essentially Robb names Jon as his heir to Winterfell should something happen to him, and I think he sends several people away to also have this information.
Well, first off, that's the thing the the thing people often make a mistake on. John was not necessarily named. We don't know who was named.
Oh,
It's a
really?
mystery. Yeah, there is a it's a mistake in the fandom to assume that like John was named.
Oh,
He was so Rob. They're on their way to the twins for the red wedding. Of course, they don't know it's the red wedding, but they're on
mm-hmm.
their way. They pass a graveyard, and so they get in this feeling that okay, what happens if Rob dies? At this point, Bran and Rickon are presumed dead. Arya is presumed dead, and actually, it's not even presumed for Bran and Rickon. Like everyone believes that Theon killed Bran and Rickon. Arya is assumed dead because no one's seen her. So he understands that if he dies, things would go to Sansa, which means they go right to the Lannisters. To protect against this, he decides he's going to write a will. He says to Catelyn, he has a conversation with Catelyn where he says, "Hey, I'm gonna leave. I want to leave Winterfell to somebody." And Catelyn says, "Oh yeah, this is an issue. I totally agree. You can't give it to Sansa. So you have some relatives in the Vale," and she starts listing like possible relatives in the Vale that would be next in line. What's funny is that little line that Catelyn says comes back in the Elaine Sample chapter because Sansa meets the Waynwoods and they all look like Starks. They're horse faced, but that's another random thing. So then Robb says, "Well, hold on a second. Why don't I leave it to John?" And Catelyn is just dead set against it. And then he says, "Well, you know what? I don't care what you think." Then a little more time passes in the chapter, and then they sign the will, but you don't know who they actually signed the will to. And actually, somebody brought this up at a question and answer session with George, and they said they went in with the assumption that John was getting named, and so he's like, the person asked the question like, will John ever find out that Robb named him in his will? And
Clever.
George R. R. Martin was like, uh, I haven't revealed who's named in the will, but he's like, but the will will come back,
Mhm.
So, so George fully admits that it's a mystery. He left it a mystery. We don't know who's in it. So I think that the fandom jumped to the conclusion that it's John, but we don't know if it's John.
So only very few select people know who's in it. Like I said before, Mage Mormont, who was Lyanna Mormont's mother, Galbert Glover,
Yeah.
I think Great John Umber as well, obviously Catelyn, and Edmure Tully. Now, if we're theorizing here, it's possible that Edmure Tully has told the Blackfish, and the Blackfish has this knowledge when he escapes River Run in Feast for Crows,
But the
which
Blackfish wasn't. So the Blackfish is down south, and Edmure is taken to the Red Wedding and then captured and imprisoned.
right, and then
So
he's brought before Jaime to relieve the siege of River Run,
yes,
which he goes into River Run and he allows his uncle, the Blackfish, to escape.
I suppose that conversation could have happened. Yeah.
Yeah, so while he's there, he could have told the Blackfish, and at the same time, if I recall correctly, when the siege of when River Run is liberated by the Lannister and Frey forces,
Yeah.
I think Jaime lets everyone go, but two people he sends to the wall, or they request to go to the wall.
That you're right. That a couple guys do go to the wall.
So if those guys were there to listen to Edmure tell the Blackfish who's in the will, and if it's Jon, then Jon could potentially have some allies coming to him in the next couple of books. Either the
That's
Blackfish
true.
or these two guys, or both, or all
That's
three.
true. If that were high on their their list of things to do. The problem is that Edmure knows that Catelyn hates Jon, and the Blackfish knows that Catelyn hates Jon. So would it be in either Edmure or the Blackfish's best interest to 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 pass this on to Jon? Like even if they knew.
Does it matter?
Most
She's dead, as far as they know.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, but it's still their sister. And what does it bring the Tullys? Like, how is it in the Tullys' best interest?
Doesn't at one point when Jamie is having a conversation with Blackfish, I don't remember if this is book or show or both. Doesn't the Blackfish tell Jamie, as long as I'm standing, the war is not over?
Yeah.
And the war still continues on if Jon is named in the will as Robb's successor?
I mean, I suppose if the Blackfish is being vindictive and just wants more chaos against the Lannisters, and who cares? Because at this point, House Tully is near extinct, so I'm just gonna create more chaos. That's possible, but the problem is at this point Stannis is, well, I guess, yeah, no, they would know that Stannis is now at the wall. So Stannis is already causing trouble up there, so it's not really necessary. Like, what's another king? If anything, it would weaken Stannis's claim to have another king and have a three-way fight up north rather than a two-way fight. In ways it would hurt their cause. Most people look at that Galbert Glover and Mage Mormont went off to find Howland Reed and so many people think that they have a copy of the will and are sitting in, Howland's castle, Greywater Watch, and like biding their time or something.
So to remind everybody, Mage Mormont and Galbert Glover are sent up to find Howland Reed, so Robb can coordinate attack on how to take Moat Cailin back from the Ironborn.
Yes.
But the Boltons beat them to it, so we don't know what's going on with that whole situation. I remember when Theon goes to help liberate Moat Cailin, I think one of the what are they called? Cragenmen? The
Oh,
swamp.
the Kranich men?
Yeah, the swamp men. I remember one of them trying to shoot an arrow at Theon.
Yeah, I mean, the Krennic men have done very little in the war. They essentially threw some arrows at the Ironborn, and that's about it. They didn't send any forces with Robb. Howland Reed's actually been a big dick. hasn't sent anyone,
That's funny. And I think last year you also I remember you saying Howland Reed has done dick all for anybody in the show
Oh,
and the books.
and the books. No, he's an ass. Everybody's just like, this is Ned's best friend. Well, he sucks. Okay, he sucks.
Well, there's a
Yeah,
huge theory online that Howland Reed will reveal Jon's parentage. I don't know about that because if he does know the whole thing with Lyanna and if R plus L equals J is true, and Lyanna swore Ned to secrecy, Ned would probably swear Howland Reed to secrecy too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, there is, of course, people that believe that John is not named in the will, and that there is evidence that other people were named, or someone else was named. And this comes from so in the final lines of the chapter in which the will comes up, Catelyn, he signs the will, and then Catelyn says, I hope that the trap that they've laid for the Ironborn is as good as the trap he's just laid for me here. And it's like, wait, what trap? Like, wait, what is she talking about? Like, what has she been, entrapped into? And it's very hard to figure it out. Some people think, oh, there's a trap of her going to Seaguard rather than to follow Robb around. And it's like, that's not very much of a trap. I mean, Robb can just order her wherever he wants. He's king. And so some people think the trap is Robb was really threatening to name John and then named someone else. And Catelyn would have been a little resistant to this other person, but because the alternative is John, she's forced to accept it.
I wonder who it could be then.
Well, the theory is like, okay, well, who would Catelyn be resistant to being named? And then who fits all of Robb's criteria? And Robb's criteria is he rejects the people from the Vale that Catelyn names because they have never seen Winterfell and they know nothing of the North. And so there's a question of, okay, maybe it's another Northerner. But the problem with naming a Northerner is that they have no connection to the Riverlands. And the problem with renaming someone from the Riverlands is they don't know Winterfell. And so it's really tough. It's really tough. Even John has nothing to do with the Riverlands. And so if he's really talking about, keeping his kingdom together, because his kingdom is the North and the Riverlands, he would need somebody that is both of the Riverlands and the North.
I can only think of one person, kinda, who might fit this description, and I could argue for them, which would be Robb and Aaron, who has some of that Tully blood, and he would, by naming Robb and Aaron as heir to Winterfell, that's his cousin, essentially.
It's true.
Not to mention, that would also force the Vale into this war, and they haven't really committed. I don't think they've committed at all any forces to the war. So it's something, but I don't think the Northern Lords would go for it because who the fuck is this?
And Robb and Aaron has never been in the North, wouldn't know the North, but it's an interesting idea. Some people would argue Arya, that even though Arya is presumed dead, like, no, we've got to skip over Sansa and give it to her. Of course, this would cause trouble because, the Boltons are actually using a fake Arya to claim the North. And then there's my theory, which is that the person named is actually Catelyn. And Catelyn, in my opinion, fits the best because she is a Stark by marriage. She is of the North. She knows Winterfell well. She is of the Riverlands. She would keep the Tully Stark alliance. She would keep the Riverland North alliance. And that she would be reluctant. She would be reluctant to be named the heir. And that the alternative is John. And so you have to. And that's what the trap is. Additionally, in between what Robb brings up, when Robb brings up John and the actual signing of the will, Catelyn goes off and starts talking to the Mormont women. And she's like, oh, you Mormonts are different. And they're like, oh, yes, no, we're she-bears. We're strong women. We can lead. And it's just this random little thing where she talks to the Mormont women for no reason. And so I think that thematically it's like, oh, she talked to a bunch of women who were telling her that no, like, actually women can lead and women can be successful leaders. And so that's my theory, is that it's Catelyn and not John.
Well, let's play devil's advocate for a minute here and say it is Jon.
Okay.
How does that work with the Night's Watch? So, does the Night's Watch recognize the North's independence, considering they're neutral in all wars and political affiliation? Like, do they, like, when Robb declares
Yeah.
himself King of the North, what is the Night's Watch's position on this? Do they just go, whatever?
Yeah, I mean,
Or,
they're supposed to be neutral and everything, but they would probably take issue with a defector, even if they're a king. Now Robb shrugs it off, and he's like, if a king orders people and promises to give 200 men in exchange, I'm sure they would be fine with it. And Stannis also doesn't seem to have an issue with it. And so some people think, okay, maybe this is just all a thematic buildup to what A Storm of Swords kind of ends with. Because if you remember, like, Storm of Swords actually has two near misses of Jon controlling Winterfell, if we assume that Jon is named in the will. That Robb would have his chance, and you're sitting there reading going, oh my gosh, Jon's gonna Winterfell. And then the Stannis thing happens. Then they die at the Red Wedding, and you're like, oh, what a lost opportunity. And then the second one hits with Stannis, where he offers Winterfell, and Jon passes it up, and then wants to be in the Night's Watch. Supposedly, if we're taking Jon's personality in A Storm of Swords, and Jon can change, but his personality should be that he would turn down King of the North if he were named in the will, right?
mm-hmm.
That he made a vow, and then they're going to get into this whole, but you died, and so you can get out of your vow. And
Well,
all
yes
that.
and no, because remember, at the end of Dance of Dragons, he reads this letter, and then he goes into the hall, explains what's going on to the wildlings and everyone present, all the factions present, and he basically says, like, who's with me? And all the wildlings are like, yeah!
Yeah, it's
But
true.
then his black brothers, it is black brothers, right? I don't want to be...
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I just want to make
yeah.
sure we're not, his black brothers end up stabbing him in retaliation because, come on, like, what are you doing? This is, the Night's Watch. You can't do this. But here's the thing. If the Night's Watch acknowledge that the North is its own thing, but they don't allow Jon to inherit this for fear of retribution from the Iron Throne, how does that go down?
Well, I mean, I think Jon at the end of A Dance with Dragons is stabbed for a million reasons. There's a great Onion article which is entitled, JFK assassinated by, and then it lists like FBI, CIA, Teamsters, like it just has this long list hit with 150 bullets. Like Jon was stabbed for 150 reasons. All right, he was really fucking up, and there's a lot of reasons to kill Jon. I mean, I can just think of a dozen off the top of my head. Cersei ordered it, or he was having all of the food eaten. He deserts, Stannis loses and he was seen as supporting Stannis, like it just goes on and on.
Oh, that is true.
Yeah.
I always had this one theory. It's a show-only theory that one of the reasons Alistair Thorne led the coup against Jon Snow is because he was kind of being forced by the Boltons to make a choice, whether they all die or they take out Jon Snow. And of course, there is a scene I remember in, I think it was season 5 or 6, where Ramsay, thinks out loud that he wants to go and kill Jon, who at this point is Lord Commander, and Roose Bolton kind of reprimands him for that, because if he does that, then all the Northern Lords would be against them. But, of course, Ramsay kills Roose and sends the letter anyways. Even if they do name Jon as heir to Winterfell in the will, it'll be such a goddamn mess. Holy shit, what a mess.
It does, and some people say, like, well, and what's the point if Jon is named? Like, Jon is already deserted and is already, thinking about attacking Winterfell. He doesn't need any motivation, because he's about to, like, say Jon does lead an army like he does in the show, and conquers Winterfell. He doesn't need any document, and plus they think Rickon is alive and all sorts of things, like.
For
But
now.
say the book ends up being like the show. Rickon dies, Jon ends up conquering Winterfell. He's got his right of conquest. He doesn't need any document, to make him king. Like at this point, like it's might makes right. You know, the Boltons took the North without any. I mean, I suppose they try to legitimize things with Arya, but with fake Arya, but everybody knows she's fake. You know, he doesn't need any sort of like worthless document to bring people on board. And who left on board is there to convince? Like everyone is dead in the North. The last armies are battling it out between Stannis and Roose and Ramsay at the Battle of Weiss. Like after that, there's not going to be any Northerners to convince. You know, like
That is true.
I mean, except for maybe the Crannogmen. I mean, like there's nobody left. So the whole will is pointless. Now, I think it's a bit more interesting if it's Catelyn, because if you remember, in A Feast for Crows, Catelyn ends up the Brotherhood, her faction of the Brotherhood Without Banners, ends up attacking the Freys and gets a hold of Robb's crown. And she's actually holding Robb's crown as if she wants to crown someone. And I do wonder if she's trying to crown one of her daughters, you know, Sansa or Arya, or if she just has the crown because she thinks that she's actually queen of the Riverlands, you know, and queen of the North. I don't know, you know, like it'd be really weird if she was sitting there waiting to crown Jon, you know, like, I mean, unless they decide to go with the whole, like, you know, in the show, she has all of this regret for hating Jon that just doesn't exist in the book. Like, you know, would she really be sitting around like undead being like, oh, I really need to crown Jon with this crown? Like, I don't know.
I think she just has the crown for sentimental reasons. I don't think she's waiting to crown anybody. That's possible. But
It just represents her loss of Robb.
Or the last thing she has of him.
Yeah. No, that makes sense too. I mean, and she wants vengeance for his death, you know.
We don't know where his bones are, and we still don't know where Ned's bones are. That's still an issue as well.
That's true. He disappeared. Ned's bones and Hallis Mullen, I think is the guy's name, who's supposed to take it to up north. This guy that just, yeah, he disappeared.
Isn't Hallis Mullen supposedly? I remember reading one of the Theon chapters in Dance, and he runs into this guy in like a hood. We don't know who he is. His face is not shown. All he says is like, "Aren't you Theon Turncloak or something?"
Right.
We don't know who this person is. Could be like a figment of Theon's imagination.
Right. It could be anything. It could be Robert Glover. It could be, you know, it could be a million people who have somehow gotten inside Winterfell. And I think my idea is that it's Robert Glover, just because it's got to be someone that would be not immediately killed, has to be perceived as on the Bolton side, you know, in some way, even if he's not.
And you see, that's why the mystery of the Hooded Man is super interesting, because it could be any number of random background characters, but you say it's a Bolton ally, and I don't know about that, because right now, like with Stannis coming, everyone's on edge, and I don't think Roose would allow any ally to just freely walk around like that.
Yeah.
Especially since he can't be sure of anyone's true allegiance to him. I mean, after all, the guy, like last week, betrayed Robb and half the North to the Freys at the Red Wedding, so...
Right, and at this point, you know, the weird thing about the Hooded Man is that we already know that the Umber forces are outside, and then the Bolton forces are inside. So what character would be cool with both forces, right? Because he's got to like get through the Umber forces, and they have to be cool with him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has to be let inside Winterfell, which means the Bolton forces have to be cool with him. And so that right there makes it a tough question on who it would be, which is why I think maybe some, like officially Robert Glover would be.
But you're presuming this person is coming in through the front door. If it's someone like Hallis Mullen, or it's someone who's been to Winterfell for quite some time, maybe he would know some secret passages.
I mean, there are secret tunnels, but who would know about the secret tunnels? I mean, I think the only people that know about the secret tunnels are Theon and Big and Little Walder Frey. So I don't know. That's a whole nother discussion. The Hooded Man. Some people would argue that even George doesn't know. He just like wrote it in and he's just like, I'll figure it out later.
It could be just Theon just, like automatically assuming things, but at the same time, someone's in Winterfell killing Freys and Boltons. And at first we're like, okay, it has to be Mance Rayder and his spearwives. But then at one point, even one of them says, yo, it's not us.
Yeah, that's the murder of Little Walder Frey. So that's a big mystery. I have a whole video on the murder of Little Walder Frey and who I think it is.
That you've already put out?
Yeah, it's called A Frey in the Snow. I put it out a few years ago.
Who
It's
is
a two-parter.
who is the killer then?
Well, I would argue Ramsay. Some people jump to. I think that most people in the fandom would say it's Big Walder, but I think that doesn't make any sense at all. Like any sense.
What's the theory for and against Big Walder?
That Big Walder is obsessed with succession, and Little Walder is ahead of him in the line of succession. And I'm just like, they're like 63rd and 67th. Like, it's useless to try to like kill him at this point. Like, that's stupid. Also, like, Little Walder is much bigger and would be able to, he would not be able to take him on, or he would not be confident in taking him on. It would be very silly. Like, they'd already established in A Clash of Kings that Little Walder was incredibly strong and would knock Big Walder into the pond when they played Lord of the Crossing. And it was the same. Then they went jousting, and Little Walder was just knocking Big Walder off because Big Walder is smaller. So if you're really like, why would you want to jump from 60 something to 61st? And by attacking a huge person in the middle of it's just silly. Plus it doesn't work out for Little Walder because after that murder the Freys are sent outside because of that murder, and now Little Walder is riding into battle. I'm sorry, Big Walder. Little Walder's dead. Big Walder is now riding into battle to die against Stannis. So it didn't even work out for him. It was really stupid. It's a really stupid plan.
Why would Ramsay want to kill some Freys?
Because I think he believes that I think he is in a power struggle with his father. And so he needs to get forces that are aligned with his father out of the castle.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So the Freys are aligned with Roose, and definitely aligned with Roose because Fat Walda is married to Roose. And so everything relies on that marriage, while their connection to Ramsay is fuck all. In fact, they hate Ramsay because he's a threat to any child that Fat Walda has to inherit Winterfell. So Ramsay is a threat. So they are very anti-Ramsay. So Ramsay is in his best interest to get any Roose Bolton supporting forces out of the castle. Because if his father dies, he gets the Bolton force. So the biggest forces in Winterfell are the Bolton forces and the Frey forces, and then everybody else kind of is smaller. So you kind of get the sense that all of the other forces hate Ramsay. So all of the other forces plus the Freys could probably take on the Bolton forces. But if you get the Frey forces out of there, the Bolton forces, are overwhelmingly the largest force. And so Ramsay would be in control of that if his father dies, and he wouldn't have to worry about anything. So in a sense, the Freys are just a big threat to Ramsay, and so he needs to get them out.
That would actually fall in line with the show as well, where in season 6, when Ramsay kills Roose, he also makes sure Fat Walda and her child are also killed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, kind of, it's one of those poor Freys situation. But yeah, the Freys get sent outside. Little Walder, Big Walder, he purposely named them this so you'd get him confused. But Big Walder is riding off to war. We actually spot Big Walder in the Asha sample chapter, the Asha fragment. But you know about the Asha fragment? Have you ever read it?
Fragment. It's for Winds of Winter?
Yes.
What?
Yes. So you've read most of the sample chapters, right?
Mercy, there was the one with Sansa, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as it turns out, there is a small fragment of an Asha chapter that was spotted. So George R. R. Martin did a quick interview with John Oliver, and in the background, his computer was on, and and these people zoomed in, and what they could make out, you could figure, it's only like 2 paragraphs, but it's definitely an Asha chapter. And in that 2 paragraphs, Big Walder is in the paragraph. So he is riding into war against Stannis.
So does that mean the pink letter was legitimate? Because in the pink letter, Ramsay really details a lot of things only certain people would know. I don't think Stannis would know all the things in that letter. Like
I don't think it affects the pink letter, because people that argue for the pink letter say that there's a time jump and things like this, and things are out of order. So I don't think it makes a difference for the pink letter being real or not. At least the Asha fragment, and we kind of know because the Theon sample chapter came out, and we knew that the battle was coming, and then the Asha chapter is just the battle, and so she's just sitting there watching these forces, like these Frey forces, arrive and head, charging them, and that's as far as the story gets. That and she sees Mors Umber's head. So Mors Umber is apparently dead.
Huh.
They have it on a spike.
Find me this fragment chapter. I gotta check. I didn't know about this. I gotta check this
Sure.
out.
I did a video on it. If you
You
if you go
did?
to
Yo, you gotta. I love you, man, but you gotta like. Do you have playlists? I'm one to talk.
I
My
do.
playlists are
It's on my
scattered.
prepping for winter. It's on the Asha fragment, Asha prepping for winter. Sadly, when I did my analysis, I missed that it was Big Walder in there. But it's they describe this Frey armor that this character has, and it's Big Walder's armor. So
Are you ever gonna redo some of your older theories? Because you could do a Dornish Master Plan remastered or re-edit edition, or you have to rename it something, and you might have to re-record.
add it to the list. Add it to the list of all the videos I have to make.
Oh, by the way, I got a bone to pick with you.
Oh no.
That's right. So Preston hits me up and he goes, "Hey, Carmine, George got some serious racist allegations against him. We gotta go defend him." And I'm like, I don't know, man. He goes, "Yeah, come on, let's go defend him." And I'm like, "Okay, is this going on your channel?" And this guy, "What? No, it's going on your channel. Yeah, it's perfect for you."
But you like salacious things. That's what I thought. That's why I thought it would be good on your channel.
I put this shit up, and immediately YouTube flags this as like, "Nope, we can't monetize it." No, I'm sorry, buddy, we
Yeah,
can't.
but they've been yellow dollar signing everything, so it's tough these
Actually,
days.
I've been on a good roll. Like, for people who don't know, when you upload a video to YouTube, they ask you questions. Is this for kids?
Yeah.
Does this contain hate speech or stuff about war or major amounts of cursing, whatever? And I've been on a good streak, and then this completely destroys my.
Yeah, my analysis of the Mercy chapter has been ruining mine because it is a pretty damn racy chapter.
Well, I
That was
blame you.
yellow dollar signed. Yeah.
I blame you for this. Actually, you know what? I disputed it and they let it go, surprisingly.
Oh, nice.
But
Okay.
apparently George got even more trouble after we did that video. They
Oh,
called him
really?
transphobic. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand the transphobic stuff.
So
But
basically he made a joke about I think the statue, the Oscar statue or something like that being having no dick. And I guess that's
oh,
somehow transphobic. I took it as a Varys joke because Varys is a very popular character in the
mm,
show,
mm,
and they always
mm.
make eunuch jokes out of him, and therefore,
Have you ever seen Akira?
yes, the anime
Yeah.
movie, yes.
Yeah. So I remember, and this whenever this happens, this is now like burned into my head. So in Akira, uh, there is a something they do with the sound. Whenever there's a massive explosion, rather than it being super loud, things will go silent. for the really huge explosions. And so there, near the end of the movie, there is this, things are ramping up, and, Tetsuo is going nuts, and the whole city's, Neo-Tokyo's falling apart. There's this huge, massive explosion. It's super, super loud. And then there's this huge, massive explosion, and Akira shows up, like reborn. And he walks forward naked. And of course, he's Kendalled. And my friend in the theater, like, it immediately goes silent, and my friend, like, goes, Akira's got no dick. And then, like, the entire theater just, like, erupts in laughter. I'd seen this special release of Akira in the theater many, many years ago. This was actually when I was in college. And he's like, yeah, Akira's got no dick. And it's just like, oh. Yes, he was, yeah.
But George is not transphobic. For those of you who are curious, it's not a thing at all whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna, if you criticize George, he's pretty far to the left on the spectrum, pretty sensitive to these issues. He's probably not one to be criticized. There's more people to criticize than him. Criticize me more than, I'm. Criticize Carmine. Criticize anybody else.
No, leave me alone. I have nothing to do with anything. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
But Preston, shall we wrap this up?
Sure thing.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this mini episode. We took a break from Fire and Blood. I'm dreading this next chapter because, fuck, it's long.
Yeah. It's really long.
It's the final Alysanne Jaehaerys chapter.
Yeah, and they threw the kitchen sink in this one. And he's ready to go off on tangents. Man, it's just 30 pages of tangents.
30 fucking pages.
I mean, well, first of all, the whole chapter is like 70-something pages.
70 pages.
But like he starts talking about some random stuff. But we'll get to it. We're doing it next.
Fuck. Oh my! Are we doing Lovecraft Country? I kind of don't want to. I actually.
We'll see.
Don't.
Look, I'll watch the first episode. See if I like it. There was a lot of buzz, but we'll see. I don't know. So I don't know. We'll see. Lovecraft was a horrible racist, so I don't know what they're doing with him.
I'm sorry, but guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.